over, all our brothers and sisters, wherever they are, in different countries, in different continents, in different time zones, in different conditions, in different mental state, in different health conditions, and in different wellness conditions. Well, this pandemic has shaken up the whole world, economy, thought processes, education, health sector, everybody. But however, things are improving, things are getting better. And yesterday, when we were hearing one of the programs in the evening on current affairs in India, it was conveyed within next 90 days. We presume, we hope that things would be back to the normal. We pray to Almighty, things should be all right. However, at the same time, in the ASEAN, when I had a program this afternoon at 3 p.m. Indian Standard Time, I was a little worried because somebody from Malaysia told me that third wave is striking over there and casualties are increasing. So we pray to Almighty. Everybody world over should be fine. They should be having good health conditions. So, ladies and gentlemen, while praying for everybody and while considering the whole world is one family, the whole globe is one family, irrespective where we are, we are privileged this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever time zone you are in, to have Professor Sarat Mananji all the way from the United States. He's joining us from Houston, Texas, USA. He's a social scientist as well as academician, great scholar, great contribution. The more I read about him, the more I have gone through the articles, I kept on realizing inside there's so much to learn from humanity. There's so much to learn from each other. And at the same time, we have also been joined by Dr. Vivek Shankar Natarajan ji, Professor of Marketing, Lamar University from Texas, USA. We extend a very hearty welcome to both of them for having spared their valuable time and gracing the occasion. So, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, let's pray for the wellness of everybody and move on with our journey. Today is 462nd, 462, 462nd webinar live on the YouTube GS Motivator channel. You can come on, you can join over there, you can be a part of it. And during this particular pandemic in the last 9 months, like doctors, nurses, and paramedical people have done great job as a warriors. I think when 1.86 billion children are away from school, colleges, universities, polytechnics, ITIs, wherever they are, the teachers, educators, counselors, technocrats, they have done a wonderful job. They are also great warriors because they have tried their level best, whether flip learning or digital learning or blended learning or taco learning or outside classroom learning. Everybody has put in their heart and soul to make things going on whatsoever best they could do. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of International Chamber for Service Industry, we extend you a very warm welcome this evening. Since 1994, this chamber is getting the get together of the non-resident Indian and Indian corporate together, and from to time, need-based, whatsoever strategy paper, think tank, or whatsoever you need, a white paper, roadmap, action plan, whatsoever strategy you need, we are very happy to be a part of that. We are focusing on service industry. That is something concern. Now, when we talk about the whole world as a one family, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, what is the purpose of education? Why to take education? A couple of things are there. But well, four parameters we have drawn: cultural purpose, social purpose, economic purpose, and personal purpose for every child. And there's a little change when I go through the documents of Sir Ken Robinson. He brings economic as first activity and first part. Now, the Honorable Prime Minister of India's vision is to make India self-reliant, Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we become a self-reliant economy. And we should start living in whatever is available, the best possible way, and we should be happy. Happy index is more important than the GDP. Education, skills, technology, and creativity. Heartiest congratulations to all the stakeholders. Those are in education ecosystem in India. 1947, independence of India. 1968, the first policy. 1986, second policy. 1992, minor changes. And now, after 34 years, new policy of education, India's National Education Policy, NEP 2020, on 29th of July at 4 p.m. in the evening, getting the clearance from the cabinet and notes and green signal from the Prime Minister of India. A lot of deliberations being done onto it. And the best part is the government has taken almost more than a year, and they have tried to reach up to block level before announcing this policy, that should you wish to send any suggestion, please do send earlier to Ministry of HRD, which is now named and renamed as Ministry of Education. And as far as the reforms and other things are concerned, school education, higher education, 5 tips I would like to quickly cover over here. Vocational and skill is given the importance over here. Number 2, less of curriculum, less of contents, more of practical. Number 3, coding. And as far as the technology is concerned, is being brought into the system right from the 6th standard onward. As far as higher education is concerned, school education, there's one more important point: no art, no commerce, no science. All are blended together. The child who is studying science can take an art subject. They can go for music also. The child who is studying commerce can take fashion designing. So that is something which has been done, and all institution given instruction, you got to accommodate everybody. As far as higher education is concerned, now after 1 year, if you want to exit and you want to go for some time and you want to rejoin, after 1 year you get certificate. After 2 years you get diploma. After 3 years you get degree. If you want to become a teacher, now the B.Ed is going to be 4 years. You want to go for higher education, then you have to do 4 years, and thereafter you can go for your PhD. MPhil has been abolished. That will not be the part of education. 100 best education of the world setups coming to India. They are being invited. Please come set up the campuses should you wish to come over here. Our chamber is focusing on youth empowerment, teachers empowerment, and besides that, let us share. Education got to be relevant to my day-to-day life. There is a purpose of education when I'm talking about. If a child is doing a polytechnic diploma in electrician, then the child should know how to repair electricity at residence. And he should not be ringing, uncle, please come. Our electricity is not there. Could you be kind enough to repair? And he has got a polytechnic diploma. That's of no use. So keeping that profile in mind, one of the challenges which is coming now world over, the future, Bangalore, Chennai, the entire state of Punjab, there are many other places in India is going to have a challenge, and that is coming world over: water crisis, consumable water crisis. So we have started a special series every Friday evening at 5 p.m., water management strategies from our chamber. Then your health is very important. How you think, how you behave, how you react, how you act. So Ayurveda for the global wellness. And we are covering almost all aspects with the help of the Ministry of Ayush and others. Swami Vivekanand ji. Every Saturday, 5 p.m. in the evening, we go back to 11th of September 1893, 127 years back. And that's why 5 p.m. for the youth, for the education system, and for educators, we became a special program every Saturday evening at 5 p.m. Swami Vivekanand's teaching for education and youth empowerment. Sunday morning, we bring you live telecast from Woodbury University, Burbank from California. Professor Satinder Dhimanji talking Vidya se Adhyatam Vidya ki Aur. We have completed 26 programs with him every Sunday morning, 9:30 to 11. Because after 11 o'clock, there is a Man Ki Baat by the Honorable Prime Minister of India. So we complete this program at 11 o'clock. Every Sunday at 3 p.m., we are in ASEAN, 10 beautiful countries, fastest growing region and economy, and the center, 650 million population, right from Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Brunei, all when we talk about. And then thereafter comes, if I'm taking education, what are you going to offer to me? Why should I study this subject? Why should I go to institution? Okay, if you want to be self-employed, start up. And if you want to be entrepreneur, there's a micro, small, and medium enterprise deliberation every Sunday. Just before this program, we have finished a program with Rabindranath ji, who's the chairman of our MSME segment. This is the finishing school we have set up where complementary education, 36,000 students from the tribal areas in India, those are from the far flung area and weaker section of society, are being helped by our chamber since 1994. Soft skills and life skills are two of the areas which we are focusing over here. And nowadays, during this pandemic, 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 p.m. in the evening, like today, we come live to you 12 hours complimentary services. Our chamber is doing more than 26 programs in a week, making education relevant. आइए शिक्षा को प्रासंगिक बनाएं. With these efforts, ladies and gentlemen, education got to be relevant to my day-to-day life. At the same time, startup, entrepreneurships, and MSME. We should not promise to children that you will get job in future. Rather, we should equip them. Water conservation, jal sanrakshan, zarurat hai aur hamara kartavya hai. Women empowerment is very, very important, which our chamber is taking. Organic farming. I'm so happy that at the age of 72, I'm growing my own vegetables. It is my rooftop. Can you believe it? And I'm having my own organic farming, my garden, my rooftop, any nook and corner of my house, wherever I have got, I'm having organic farming and plantation, nutrition. When you eat organic vegetables, your thought process is altogether different. Music, very important for all of us. And our chamber is working for last 8 years, how music can be integral part of all subjects. At the same time, it's a stress buster. Here is the CEO because the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has got separate ministry being installed in 2014 after coming to center. And sector skill councils have been established. There are 37 sector skill councils in India. We earlier worked with the health sector, then we came to wellness sector, and nowadays we are with media entertainment sector skill council. Health and wellness is very, very important for all of us, ladies and gentlemen. We got to be mentally fit. Here comes second last slide of our chamber. The research during pandemic, what we have done, the world order will change. Sustainable development. B2B is no more business to business. It is back to basics, and that's going to be the future. Your basic food, your basic health, and your basic education. And children got to support their parents, got to become more responsible, earn and learn, do a part-time job. Whatever human mind can conceive and believe can achieve. From the global fraternity, we are bringing the confluence of best of the ideas, innovations, inventions, and best of pedagogies and regogies. This evening, this morning, this afternoon, we are privileged. We have got Professor Sarat Menon Chambotelji, social scientist and academician from the Houston, Texas, USA. He is Indian born. He's a social scientist by academic training and holds academic appointments in Houston, Texas, USA. His area of special interest in the sociology of religion. He has earned doctorate with specialization in the sociology of education and master's degree in both anthropology and sociology. Professor Menon, current research focuses on social, cultural, and economic consequences of globalization in India and religious social movements. He is currently working on a book about religious social movement in Indian state of Kerala. In addition to his academic appointments, Professor Menon serves on the board of the Institute of Spirituality and Health at the Texas Medical Center in Houston, Nestle Center for Faith and Culture, and also as the academic advisor to Indian History Awareness and Research, a think tank based in Houston, Texas, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening is brought to you with the support and help of Dr. Professor Vivek Shankar Natarajan ji, Professor of Marketing, Lamar University, Texas, USA. Professor Vivek Shankar Natarajan ji is a professor of marketing at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas, USA. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical Engineering from Bangalore University, an MBA in International Business from Panjab University, and PhD in Marketing, University of Texas, Arlington. Dr. Natarajan is one of the most experienced professors in area of online education and role of technology in higher education with continuous involvement in that area for about a decade. He was awarded for the Distinguished Educator Award by the Federation of Business Disciplines Associations of Collegiate Marketing Educators in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in extending a very hearty welcome to both the dignitaries. Those who have joined us, Namaskar, Pranam, and Hardik Abhinandan. Swagat hai aapka. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for being with us. And thank you very much for sparing your most precious time. With these words, I hand over the stage to Professor Vivek Shankar Natarajan ji and to introduce Sarat ji, and thereafter we start today's program. Professor Vivek Shankar Natarajan ji. And the best part is, see, the professor in Indian attire in a religious kind of a puja, and he is sparing little time for us to be with us, and that is Om Namah Shivaya. Okay, please go ahead, Professor Saab.
Namaste, Sarvesham Suswagatam, a very warm welcome to all of you, especially my Major Saab Gulshanchi, and then Professor Menon, who I know for the last 15 years. So Professor Menon, as Dr. Gulshan Sharma ji said, is basically a sociologist by training, and his PhD is from University of Pittsburgh, a very renowned institution. And he has been teaching for over 30 years in the Houston area, in both the Houston Community College system and also in the University of Houston system. It's kind of been one of the pillars for doing research on India-centric issues in the Houston area. And my association with him has been through IHAR a little bit, and I've listened to him moderate several talks and several seminars. And one thing is, he brings a very scholarly point of view. For example, and I think this is something I learned from him. We used to always use the word North India and South India. He said, hey, Vivek, that's incorrect. You have to use Northern India and Southern India, because North and South are basically two parts of the same country. I mean, so this is the level of detail that we don't know. We have been using terminologies incorrectly. And so that is the level of correction that most of us need. And we need scholars like Dr. Menon to correct our fundamentals, because one of the problems has been, liberal arts in India has been either dominated by a certain school of thought, or it has been relegated to, hey, we will just remember a few things, pass the exam and move on, without understanding that some of these issues deal with at the very fabric of a democratic society that we take for granted. And so we need more research, but we need more objective research. We need more scholarly research, and to make sure that we use this new education policy as a catalyst. That is why we need to bring scholars like Professor Menon and some people of his nature, who have been pursuing objective scholarship to come and work on issues. He's also been passionate about his home state of Kerala. If Kerala is a net manpower exporter. There are more Malayalis and Keralites outside of Kerala than in Kerala, for a variety of reasons. But one of the things I've found is that community is very passionate about their home thing. So you talked about Pravasiya Bharat Divas. Malayalis are also one of the big Pravasiya Bharatiyas, and to work on that issue, that's how I met Professor Menon. He has been very passionate about working on issues centric to Dharma in Kerala. And so with all that kind of scholarship, Professor Menon is somebody whom I will call as very affable, very scholarly, very, very intellectual, but very easygoing to work with. And his style of delivery, his English is typically very Victorian in nature, but that doesn't mean, but he's also very rooted in dharmic lens. So that with that background, I'm sure we are going to be in for a treat. So with that, I'm grateful to Professor Sharma ji for kind of bringing me also to this platform. And thank you very much. Have a great day. And I'm multitasking between Zoom meetings, but this is something that's very passionate. So that's why I said, okay, let me do the introduction and I'll be on mute. So have a great session, Professor Menon. Thank you for working with us and agreeing to be part of this panel. Over to you. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to all. And let me first thank, Namaste. Let me first thank Dr. Sharma for honoring me with this opportunity to interact with a number of people all around the world. And it is my sincere hope that I will not disappoint you in any way during the next 30 or 40 minutes. This is coming to you almost as an extempo because came to me at such short notice while I was swamped with the end of the semester grading work. And I did not even think for a moment when I agreed to do it. And then I had second thoughts about this, but I realized that it's a little too late to actually ask for an extension. But so this is almost an extempo. I'm trying to I'm trying to gather some thoughts on the subject matter, and I'm going to try and share with you all in the best manner possible. Let me see how well I can organize my thoughts. And if I fail miserably, I hope you will bear with me. If I'm granted another opportunity, I shall try for a sort of a better performance. And next, Vivek ji, I have known Vivek for a number of years. We have interacted closely. And I kind of like his introduction when he said that I'm half Victorian and then half Dharmic. There isn't a better way to characterize or introduce a Keralite and to throw in those elements. But I think you sort of did some injustice by not acknowledging the power of resistance that is so characteristic of all people from Kerala. And I'm reminded of what the former leader of China once said, the idea of the red and the expert, the long history of the red ideology with Kerala. By no means am I trying to establish any allegiance or linkage with that, but I want you to know that we are all being infected by that in varying degrees. But I try to be mindful of the fact that that's part of my history because I was born and raised in Kerala until my early 20s when I traveled to England, spent a few years in England before coming to United States. There's one thing that I would like to, a couple of things I would like to share with you very quickly before I delve into the subject matter. One is that I do have a sort of a special, personal challenge, and that is just to do with my vision. So from time to time, you may see me sort of looking sideways, and all I'm trying to do is to use my magnifying glass to read some notes that I jotted down. And I hope it does not distract your focus in any way. And secondly, I do want to state this clearly, and Dr. Sharma was kind enough to acknowledge and make the changes. That is, since I'm in active service with the higher education here in the US, the institutions here are very sensitive to everything we do outside of the campus, words as well as deeds. And so I just want to put a disclaimer here that anything that I end up sharing with you today or tonight, it's strictly my own views, and those opinions or views do not reflect that of the university or the college that I'm a part of. So it's a disclaimer to protect the integrity and honor the institutions that I work with. But I do have the freedom to express my opinions as long as it is coming from my very personal self and not as a representative of any institution. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you once again for inviting me to share some thoughts about the social institution of education in India and the proposed reforms that are now being considered uh, in public debates. And that's certainly a very welcome sign that things are actually going into public platform so that people in various stations can actually forward their opinions and then thoughts. That's certainly a very healthy way to go. That's exactly what we are doing, I think, now. As Dr. Sharma has invited me to share my opinions. With how large a crowd, I'm not sure, but I hope at least we have some amongst you who will be able to take some of the points that I mentioned here forward so that there will be some actions or reactions to it. Right. Um, Something about myself that is of some sociological interest is that I grew up in Kerala in the early 60s, and I continued to live in Kerala until late 70s. And it is a rather interesting time, including the sphere of education. Um, to the best describe my experience, lived experience in Kerala, I want you to know that I've had a rather sheltered upbringing, including my school years, the school that I attended, which is actually primarily reserved for children of central and state government officials who get transferred every 3 years. So that's the kind of pool that I actually mixed with. So there was a little bit of a cosmopolitan exposure even in my early years. And also, it was considered the right thing to do among certain classes of families that I came from. That is to send their children to schools where the medium of instruction is English. Right. So what that essentially what that did was um, my expertise and my finesse in my own native language, mother tongue, it got stunted. It did not grow. Yeah. However, I will never make any denial regarding my proficiency in the language, which is Malayalam. Yes, I do know Malayalam quite well. I'm quite fluent and proficient in its old script and its speech. So my spoken Malayalam, my written Malayalam, and reading comprehension, those are all very good. But how well will I perform at the didactic level? I have not tried, and I do not want to try because having gone through some academic experience in the US, I know that language is a very powerful tool. And unless it is handled with care and with prudence, it can send very, very dangerous messages across, right? So I hope this brief description of my background has sort of helps you put me on some kind of a sociocultural canvas. And then, and I have to tell you that after my high school years, I went to a local arts and science college to do my pre-degree 2 years. It used to be 10 years of schooling and then 2 years of pre-degree. And then again, 3 years of undergraduate or 4 years of professional degrees. That's what it was. So the college that I went to, that was a big a transformative experience for me from a very sheltered kind of upbringing in the school level. Then I moved into a college. Um, that's when I realized that I did not really know the society or the culture in which I grew up. It was truly an eye-opening experience to go to a college where, on the one hand, we could boast of some of the finest faculties in the state, and at the same time, every other day, the college did not function simply because there were rebellious units calling strike every other day, and that affected our education significantly. But behind all of that, and I still remember when I look back, the students that I actually lived with on that campus, very bright minds, but they came to schools with torn shirts, barefooted, did not have the money to feed themselves at lunch, so they would drink water and fill their stomach. That's the college that I attended. And that's when I realized that I did not know at all the society in which I grew up. Right, there are bright minds. And the sad fact is, even to this date, when I visit India, I do come across some of those old faces whom I can never forget. Those bright minds, those bright brains and minds that were laid waste because, in spite of their high level performance in physics, chemistry, or zoology, or mathematics, they could not earn their degrees because they failed on the Shakespeare paper. Okay, because they did not understand Shakespeare, they did not have the language proficiency, and thus, for a very long time, our country, India, continued to produce what we call or sustain what we may call a land of 3,000 lawyers and 2 carpenters. That's the best way to describe India of yesterday. Great minds that were laid waste because of a colonially imposed value system. What we were oriented to value, the core values. And unfortunately, this colonial legacy actually stunted the growth of not only individual minds, but collectively the whole nation. And it is indeed a welcome gesture, although there have been some changes in the past, but I cannot say that the educational reforms that are made until recently have been of any significant kind. So the current education policies that are proposed, it has many pluses, but as a student of sociology, Professor Vivek, you described me as a scholar. No, I'd like to reintroduce myself as a student of sociology. I'd never consider myself a scholar, right? Every day when I open a new leaf, I realize that, I am moving backward. There's a regression there happening because I realize that, yeah, I know even less than I did yesterday. So I'm a student. So let me share with you some critical sociological perspectives on what education is, what changes can be made, and what should be the ultimate purpose or function of the institution of education. Yes. We like to see, when I say we as students of social science, we like to view education as a social institution that occupies an important segment of the entire social system. So it's an integrated model. I do not like to see sociology in isolation, education in isolation. Um, it is, in fact, my own terminal degree, which is in sociology of education, up beyond my master's, is to actually look at the whole idea of seeing education as a component of society. So primarily, we look at the school and society, school in the broadest sense, educational institution, the link between the two, the functions and dysfunctions that have ensued. This is what we look into. Um, um, Let me give you a small illustration to sort of get that point across. When I first traveled to England in the late 70s, that was a time when there's a famous hard rock group called Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's a very popular song, and it's called We Don't Want No Education. And it became such a hit in England that at some point, the authorities actually witnessed students in elementary schools walking to the school singing the song, We Don't Want No Education. I mean, that's the influence of popular music on the young minds. And that scared the authorities in that country. And as a result of that, the song was actually taken off air. There was a ban on it. Because that particular song, its lyric is all about the social functions and dysfunctions of education. Of course, there was some theoretical bias in their approach. There is some kind of a socialist bias in there. Now, when we look at the Indian educational system and its consequences, that is especially the colonial and post-colonial, you will see that some of what you find in the lyrics is, as I'm afraid, that describes the sad plight of affairs in India also. Hmm? And we must actually thank our current administration for taking this bold step to reevaluate the existing state of the institution and make some very courageous reform proposals, which we look at very shortly. Um, the the most important thing for us to know is that in any reforms, we should see this institution, the educational institution, as having an integrative function, that it is not meant to divide a society, but it should be designed to integrate and harmonize. Yeah, one of the primary functions of the institution is to harmonize and to maintain harmony so that all ends meet. Unfortunately, at least in the colonial and post-colonial system of education, what I have observed is that instead of fulfilling that integrative function of education, the system has actually managed to disintegrate society. It has managed to disintegrate and to perpetuate some inequities, right? That has only managed to make the system very dysfunctional. The system has continued to be dysfunctional. As I alluded to earlier, we created a land of 3,000 lawyers and 2 carpenters. I mean, that shows you, how dysfunctional the system has been. And we have used the concept of prestige for all the wrong reasons when it came to education. As a result, if you go to a state like Kerala, as Vivek rightly pointed out, that Kerala is second to none in exporting workforce, and there are more Keralites outside of Kerala than within the state. And this is because of this dysfunctionality here, that if you go to Kerala today and look for a carpenter, good luck. Whereas if you want to look for a bunch of unemployed youngsters with degrees, you name it, it's not hard to find. And also the certain attitude to education, and that is sort of in the wrong sense of the term, elitist. I'm one person who can speak in defense of elitism or elite mode of education, but here I'm being very careful in actually applying the term. Basically, I'm describing generations of people in that state and elsewhere in the country who have been on the wrong track regarding the meaning and value of education. And so I bring into picture this idea of vocational education, and that is with education itself has been so shallowly defined, and the consequence was that even those who had gone through the so-called educational experience simply cannot define the term education because they mix it up with skills skills and knowledge for economic development, but hardly ever seen the value or merit of education or knowledge for social development. We don't see that. Um, the new set of reforms, which I have looked at a few times, one of the good things about it is that it recognizes some of the theories and anthropology that we look at, the nature of humans and the course of human development. That is, humans are born polymorphous perverse. What that means is that at the time of birth and even during our formative years, humans have the capacity to go in many directions. They have the capacity to go in many directions. But from that state, the natural polymorphous perverse state that you can go in any direction, by the end of the formative development, which is culturally induced or imposed, what you see is that the individuals move away from their poly capacities to they become unidirectional. They become unidirectional. And that has had a sort of a constricting kind of effect on not only the individual's life chances and development, but also that of the society. So in that regard, I would say that one of the major shifts that we see in the proposed policies is to foster the many talents and innate capacities of the individuals to pursue the paths that the individual chooses, which can directly or indirectly contribute to a nation's success or prosperity. Right? Um, Another aspect that I would like to actually see, if it is not already there, is to put an emphasis on the centrality of ethics for social development, which we obviously do not see if you watch the behavior of the politicians, if you watch the dramas staged by politicians in the country. It's very obvious to us that not only in the arena of politics, but in the spheres, in all of the spheres, we see that the individuals have developed some sort of a compromising kind of attitude towards living, towards survival. There was a time in the history, in the annals of India's ancient and medieval history, where you see that ethics did occupy a central place in everyday life. And what we do not see in our own schooling is the lack of due emphasis given to ethics in everyday living. So, of course, we would say that primarily that should rest on the shoulders of parents or the guardians of youngsters. But we must also take into account the changes, the structural changes that have taken place in society, the changes that have taken place in the institution of family, whereby the roles and statuses have actually changed significantly. Therefore, the function of schooling, the function of educating a child has actually been taken over by the state or private agencies from the hands of families. And formal education has become very advanced, developed and advanced. Therefore, I would strongly recommend the inclusion of training in ethics and make it a very important component of the new proposed changes. Because we see a dearth of that in many areas. And needless to say that ethics and conformity, that is vital to the sustenance of a very harmonious and conforming society. In this regard, I don't want to digress, but let me pull something and share with you briefly from my own research and the sociology of religion. Um, if you take a quick look at the history of Europe over the last 2000 years, see how successfully, how cleverly, and how successfully the institution of religion was actually used to, to integrate society and to harmonize the social behavior of the followers and to instill in the minds as well as in society formally a set of ethics that went unquestioned for several centuries, and what consequence it had for the political and economic prosperities or growth of those nations in Europe. You see that. But if you look at the history of India from ancient to medieval to modern, right, you see that as a result of our own unique historical experiences, including long successive invasions, conquests, invasions, conquest and domination, and destruction of cultures, right? As a result of that, we did not have a strong institution in our society to dispense ethics to people in an organized and formalized way. And that has also contributed to the chaos that we experience in the country today in Indian society. So it's all the more important, all the more reason for those in power to consider the inclusion of ethics in education, be it public or private. And I think it would be a wonderful idea to integrate that into the national curriculum at different stages. Another aspect that I would like to talk about here is that um, one of the ideas that they have floated in the set of new policies is to open India's doors to foreign universities. 100 top universities, world-class universities, invite them to India to set up campuses and to offer higher education degrees. um, on the one hand, I see this as offering a terrific advantage to those pursuing natural sciences, physical sciences, and technology, because India stands to gain by sharing technology, and no doubt about it. Um, and in my own research in the past, when I looked at my doctoral dissertation was actually on migration of actually Indian students to Western nations. I proposed this push and pull factors model in that, and also both the experiential as well as the colonial uh, effect on the Indian psyche. I looked at the push and pull factors there. And so it offers terrific advantage in that our students can actually come face to face with the most advanced and recent um, contributions in various science fields. But I am somewhat skeptical of the benefits of introducing foreign universities and foreign academic discourse into Indian soil in areas of humanities and to a lesser extent, social science areas, particularly humanities. Um, what I have observed over the last many decades in the Indian front is that there is an extreme dearth of data on Indian humanities in either the school or higher education curriculum. That extreme dearth of data on that. As I uh, referred to earlier in my anecdote, and as a college student, how many bright minds have been laid to waste as a result of their inability to master Shakespeare's language that ended up on the street. Well, when I look back, I ask this question, well, instead of wasting our talents, wasting our time on these mandatory subject papers like Shakespeare and British poetry or the social history of Britain and all those things, why did our education system not grant us opportunity to actually take at least one glimpse, get at least one glimpse of our own treasure trove of philosophies, darshanas, our own uh, contributions in the fields of art and fine arts, uh, in literature, in poetry. We never really got that opportunity to actually study these materials. Instead, what was forced upon us, even those students who went through the medium instructions in their vernacular, they had no choice but to subjugate themselves to this, the tyranny of the colonial legacy, right? In a free and independent nation, in an unquestioned manner, these unfortunate souls were actually dragged through it and their destinies were just blunted by this. I think that is cruelty of the highest order that was inflicted upon Indian minds. And it is high time that India moved away from that and to expose its citizens, young minds, to our own native legacies, right? So that it can foster not only pride in one's own cultural legacies, that it can also foster a sense of patriotism, a sense of nationalism. And that can definitely go towards, take a long way towards protecting not only the integrity of the nation, but it can also strengthen our own sense of identity, which alone can keep the system united, which alone can keep India, um, what shall I say, um, uh, make India the leader of the world or one among the best in the world. Yeah, it is very important that we make our citizens, make them proud of their legacy, make them knowledgeable, and make them ethical, and thus support the growth and sustenance of the nation. So I would say that in the implementation of the new educational policies, one, we should give due emphasis to the centrality of ethics, right? And two, we should grant exposure to the legacy in our humanities, our history, our culture, our philosophy, our darshanas, and at the same time be very selective in introducing what is alien. We need to be very selective in that. Technology, yes, it's of course a very welcome idea, can be practical, but at the same time, our contributions towards civilization has been incomparable, as even the non-Indian philosophers and writers and historians have acknowledged. And for whatever reason, our own sons and daughters have not been privy to that knowledge. That's most unfortunate. That's most unfortunate. And I wish our new government every success in moving forward with their plans for implementation of this brave new education policy, but we must temper it with prudence. We should always take a very constructive, critical, analytic approach to evaluating things from time to time before they are put in place. What should be at the focus? The vision driving this new educational policy should be a united India, right? One integral, cohesive system where ethics enjoys a central place, that every citizen can be guided by a strong sense of ethics and their duties. I go back to what, ironically, what Chairman Mao said. Don't get me wrong, but this idea, this typology that he presented, the red and expert. Well, delete red. We have to have the expert in every individual. Expert, that component should be there, but it should also be value guided. So the other half, don't call it the impractical visionary, no. You have to be of value, utility to society, and at the same time, it should be value guided. And I'm not proposing that those values be what guided our neighbors, definitely not. India has its own legacy. And that's where the centrality of ethics comes into play. By the way, how am I doing for time?
It's entirely up to you because the flow is beautiful. We are getting a lot of inputs. Please take your time.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm also, to be perfectly frank, I'm also struggling to sort of organize my thoughts. I have scribbled them because of the time constraint. Let me take a quick look at what I have actually
Sure.
put here.
Please. Ladies and gentlemen, those who have joined later, I just wish to share with you, Professor Sarat Mananji has joined us all the way from United States. And we are talking about the new education policy and what exactly the new education policy, our aspirations are, what do we wish to achieve over there, and how are we proceeding on to that. And his valuable suggestions are coming, United India, ethics, what India should enjoy, and cultural and central place, and the value guided, and students in education, what all they take. And so far, the most stimulating was 3,000 lawyers and 2 carpenters. That was something very, very ironical.
Thank you. So thank you for giving me that. Right.
Yeah.
Let me continue, and let me see if I can shift our focus to some of the social problems that may have emanated by this undirected approach to education in India, and that is implementing a system that is out of touch with the reality of society. As I said, in the sociological approach to looking at education, we see that we take that integrative approach, that is school and society. So sociologists of education, they put the institution of education in the context, in a larger social context where family comes into focus. So you cannot separate education of a child or education of an individual, separate that from the social reality in which that person lives. So herein we bring the institution of the family. I briefly alluded to the link to religion, but now I'm bringing in another component, that is institution of family. What role does family play in the grooming of the child? Keep in mind the the very important aspects like ethics, just behavioral domain of culture. Culture, by the way, we actually look at the entity of culture as having three domains. One is the cognitive domain, where the beliefs, the values, the worldviews, ideologies, all those things rest. And the next domain is the normative domain or the behavioral level, where we look at uh, the behaviors of people in society, normative behavior of people in society, their customs, their traditions, their ways of doing things. Of course, that's where ethic comes in. And the third domain, of course, is the material aspect of it, the material culture. That includes or such things, give you some very simple illustrations or examples. Our clothing, the food, where some of our beliefs and our worldviews are actually manifest, right? And it's the domain. So going back to the cognitive and the normative aspect of it. One of the challenges that Indian society has faced, at least in the context of development in modern education, is this challenge. It's a phenomenal challenge, and I do not want to be too harsh on the gains that or the losses we have made, but it has been a formidable challenge in that the institution of the family operates in such a way that in case of the vast majority of Indian citizens, um, the institution of the family been uh, has not supported. I should qualify that statement. Unintentionally, so it has not supported the success of the child in a formal educational setting. For vast majority, I would say. But there are segments of society where it has been very beneficial and supportive. But we have to, as a sociologist, I would look at these numbers, right? And I say majority, numerical majority, and a numerical minority. And what I have here, the case in point here is that um, the point that I'm trying to get across to you is related to gender. So I bring in the institution of family as well as the social variable of gender. Okay. So if you look at India's population, okay, up until now, you have a significant number of majority of what we could describe as agrarian, agricultural, what we say rural populations. Right? And then you have semi-rural, suburban, and urban. So if you look at the children coming from urban, suburban, and semi-rural populations, that cities have served as magnets to attract students. And it is one of the, in my college years, it is those populations that I, for the first time in my life, got exposed to. That's why I call it a really an eye-opening experience. That's what put me in place. It told me how little I knew, or that I knew nothing about the world in which I lived, right? And in fact, that's what turned my interest and passion towards social science. Otherwise, I would have, like all my siblings and my contemporaries, I would have ended up in either some engineering college or medical school, right? Those are the only two options we have. So instead, I turned to anthropology and sociology. So let me go back to what I was saying. Yes, family, where you see the two genders there. So typically in an agrarian or agricultural setup, family setup, or a village, what we see is it's just a very interesting phenomenon, but it's a sad one. The socialization is very much a gendered phenomenon, particularly particularly in the rural and semi-rural settings. It is very much a gendered phenomenon, but you have very clear-cut and rigid, if I may say so. It's a very rigid, inflexible kind of cultural production taking place there. Very rigid and inflexible, um, contributing significantly to the dysfunctions, if I may say that. Um, Typically, how a girl child is socialized in a rural family setup is very different from how a male child is socialized. So, in that typical rural setting, who is actually being left responsible for socializing the children? Well, it's the female in the household, the woman in the household. And what about the male, the head of the household? Well, typically that person is away from the household, maybe working in the fields or away from home, because he is a breadwinner. And so the responsibility, this immense responsibility rests upon the shoulders of the mother, who's, for all practical purposes, to provide as far as children are concerned, keeps herself, busy 24/7. So, how much time does the mother um, set aside for grooming the children, girls and boys separately? So, here is a convenient arrangement that we have seen in Indian villages. And that is, and it also has to do with the level of education. So, I need to bring in those variables also, right? Gender is one variable, the socioeconomic status is another variable. Level of education is another variable, and the ecology, right? The social and cultural ecology of the individual in question is another variable. When you look at that, you see that typically a male child during his formative years, he gets socialized out on the street, not within the family setup. Whereas the girl gets 100% domesticated, I should say. She gets fully groomed by the time she's 12 or 14 years old. Yeah, she's groomed to become another or the perfect woman of the next generation, right? Right. So what happens to the male child? Well, the male child is socialized out on the street. When I say out on the streets, I don't mean to say that the child is orphaned or deserted or thrown out of the home. No, he's encouraged to, and he does end up spending much of his time during his formative years. And I need to underscore that. Formative years, he is getting socialized off the street, meaning he's taking actually instructions and ideas and learning the value systems from his cohort who are actually met with similar situations. So what you see here, and I'm applying actually a social theory here, is that it is not that these rural men folks are deviant or criminal. They are not. They are not. As far as they are concerned, if you look at the world and their own life through their own eyes, you will see that they are 100% conforming to the expectations of the society in which they're living. Okay? But when we look at it, we see that, yes, indeed, they are conforming, except that they're conforming to a deviant set of norms. And why do I call it a deviant set of norms? Because unless one is actually uh, taken through periods of obedience and conformity, the chances are that they would remain by default rebels, right? This tendency to question authority, they become rebels without a cause. And if you look at the social unrest in India, if you ever wondered why India has so richly, abundantly produced rebels who resort to strikes and hartals and bans and destruction of public properties, who engage in the politics of protest, you don't need to look very deep or far. You can see that it all lies in the way our children are socialized. It is not that they are innately inferior. It is not that they are innately bad or weak. It is just that it isn't actually in the nature of socialization that has been characteristic traditionally, traditionally in India. So what is this leading us to? Well, the importance of acknowledging the power of gender, and that is the role and status of women in our society. And I'm not at all, therefore, endorsing the idea of radical feminism or any such thing. No. What I'm saying is that, and I'm quoting someone, I'm not sure who actually said that. If you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate the whole, right? Because she is a far greater influence on more people. So what does that mean? What sort of education? Do I mean formal degrees? No, 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 not necessarily. What I'm saying is that there needs to be some acknowledgement of the importance of a woman's role in society. And I'm not proposing that therefore we should encourage every woman to turn every man into a squeaky mouse. That's not what I'm saying, right? The importance of contribution, in fact, historically, you will see that one of the worst and one of the most tragic mistakes that we made in our entire history of humanity was our failure to recognize the contribution of women in societies of all kinds. And I'm not saying that India is the forefront. No, India has done quite a good job, because if you look at our own literature and history, that we have acknowledged the strength and the divine presence in everyone. We have seen that. But understand one thing, that we have been subjugated for over 1,000 years by alien legacies and ideas, which has brought it's had discontinuities. So we need to look at empowering women in the sense that a woman should have greater control in matters of socializing male children. She should not simply take this hands-off approach when she socializes her son. She does not follow that when she socializes her daughter, right? But they should also socialize their sons. And you see this difference when you go to urban children versus rural. You see that difference. However, I must acknowledge that even in the population of urban students, people who are totally what we say, coming from urban homes, upper class homes, who attend so-called elite colleges in India. Yes, I do happen to listen to some of their nonsensical debates, where they, in an unquestioning manner, they borrow upon the ideas coming from Western cultures and then accept in an unquestioning manner. Yeah, that is there, but that's a different problem that we have to look at. But we do need to look at the majority here, numerical majority. What sort of social forces are at work, and some corrections need to be made. Well, what is the best way to actually bring in greater conformity and obedience to our general population? Well, making some, do some social engineering in the arena of family and schools. Another thing that we look at, I don't know how closely it's related to how closely it is related to area of education, is that India could actually introduce a mandatory sort of training program whereby students would actually experience obedience and conformity, which is not to close off their right minds. I don't mean it in that sense. We have NCC Cadet Corps, National Cadet Corps, but it's not been very effective, right? But if you look at some of the other countries, and I've done comparative and international education, and you see that in some countries, every youngster, post-adolescent teenager must go through military training for 2 years. But what does it do? That sort of a boot camp experience. Of course, we love to avoid that boot camp experience, but it has long-term positive consequences because it instills the value of obedience and conformity. Why it is important? Well, unlike Japan, I looked at Japanese educational system. Well, it is very much ingrained into the core value system of Japanese culture, which is 85% Buddhist. Well, where did Buddha lay emphasis on? Well, ethics. So it's very much part of the Japanese culture. Collaboration, cooperation, right? Empathy, sympathy, all of these are part of the core values of the Japanese culture. Well, why is it that we have abandoned those things? Is it not important to work on our ethics, to work on the ethics of the individual? If we haven't done that for decades or centuries, it's high time India took a much deeper look at it and propose plans and programs that would instill that in the minds. This is very critical. Unless we work on that area, no matter how much we invest in our children, the unguided, the ill-informed mind is going to go astray, and all the investments will be wasted. Ethics is very important. Um, Gender socialization in the sense that a woman should have the ability to sort of regulate the type of behavior which they have successfully managed to foster in female children, but that have not been attempted in male children, right? And that could lead to what? Not only a culture of protest, but in today's times, what are we having to deal with? Terrorism, right? I mean, on an unprecedented level that virtually all nations in the world is desperately trying to prepare to avert the growth of terrorism and also onslaught of that, right? So obedience and conformity. We have to make our children understand, realize, and accept the value and importance of conformity. If we do not have a religious institution in a secular nation to do that, then we should actually do it through other institution. If the family does not do it, then the next thing is for the institution of education, where at least students would gain an exposure. They should gain an exposure to do it. And I know that in India's private educational institutions that are run by Catholic bodies, Christian educational institutions, where students actually, it is mandatory for them to actually do a paper on ethics, that is Christian morality, right? And that's been going in an unquestioned manner. Nobody has questioned the legitimacy of that. Well, at the same time, well, then that takes us to the political institution and the political consciousness of the people, which is that understanding the meaning and importance of constitution, that every child in the country should and must know that they have something called the constitution, and that they should also become aware of the functions of the constitution, why we have a constitution, why they have a constitution, and what does it mean, what is a constitution, and what are its functions. And this is something, well, sadly, when I was going through school, I don't remember coming across a chapter on constitution in any of the grades in middle or high school. I didn't come across that. And I hope it is there in today's social studies history book. I know what is there in the school CBS, is the school state syllabus of the state of Kerala. I'm reviewing that now, the social studies. In the 10th grade, the social studies called social science. The entire book is theme based. And if you want to know what the theme is, this is mandatory. This is a required history syllabus in 10th grade, the state syllabus in the state of Kerala. The theme of the book is, if you can guess, I'll give you $1 million, but I'll go ahead and tell you what it is. Revolution. That is the theme of the book itself. A high school history book, social studies, social science book is theme based. Talk about closing of the Indian minds. That's how you see it. So I did not have that luxury when I was growing up, but I had to very quickly narrate you in a minute what happened to one of my close relatives who attended an American citizenship interview. The whole interview took only 5 minutes. And the interviewer, the immigration officer, was an Irish American elderly person. He asked 3 questions. The first question was that, who wrote the Constitution in India? And this man, he did not even waste a wink. He immediately said, oh, Dr. Ambedkar. And this Irish American visa officer said, nonsense. He didn't write the Constitution. So this guy was stuck, my relative. So okay, I gave up. So who did? It's the people. You don't name a person, it's the people. Okay. Lost the first question, moved on to the second question. When did the US run into a constitutional crisis for the first time? Oh, that is a tough question. So my cousin, he said, I'm not sure. Okay, so this man gave him a clue. Do you know whose head is on the penny coin? Oh, he immediately said, oh, that is Abraham Lincoln. All right, so what is he known for? Then he began to say, oh, he was best known for the emancipation of slaves in India. And the Irish American said, nonsense. That's not what he's known for. So you see, he tried to forcibly annex the southern states into the Union. And that's when it ran into a constitutional crisis. Oh, I did not know that. Okay. So 2 out of 3 gone. So my cousin kind of, knew that he was going to lose that. He wouldn't get his citizenship. Then he asked the last and final question. Okay. Can you name a nutty amendment to America's Constitution? And my cousin, even without a wink, he said, oh, yes, I know. The right to bear arms. That's a nutty amendment to the Constitution. And the man's response was the exact same thing. Nonsense. And not only did he say that, he almost jumped out of the chair. It's like, how dare you attack the Bill of Rights there? That was not a nutty amendment. That was a great amendment to the Constitution, right to bear arms. So my cousin gave up. Okay, flunked the test. Okay, now tell me the answer. So he said, no. That's when they tried to bring in Prohibition Act. They tried to force it down people's throat. That's when they reacted. So what he was, and then, so my cousin said, all right, so when are you going to invite me for the next interview? Second chance. Anyway, I failed. And the man said, no, you did not. You passed. Why do you think I asked you these 3 questions? And the man said that before you actually renounce your citizenship and take another one, and you become a citizen of a country, you should know the meaning and importance of constitution. A constitution is, this is the reason why I asked you 3 questions on the exact same thing, right? The reason why you do this is because a constitution, you should know, is a sacred document that protects your rights against the coercive powers of the state. You elect people in good faith and put them in positions of power. What if they turn around and try to constrain your beliefs and your rights, fundamentals? What can happen? Well, this man who grew up in India and was a successful scientist, and the man actually, the interviewing officers, that is the reason he asked these tough questions. When someone like you decide to take citizenship of this country, and especially coming from India, you should know that what people did to protect or not protect their nation, what they could do and what they could not do. This is where the importance of a constitution lies. So I would say that in the implementation of these new policies, every child should be made aware of the meaning and importance of a constitution, right? That they have fundamental rights. There's no point in, at the age of 60, you look back and start complaining and grumbling because, oh, the state is walking over my place of worship. They are closing down and they are taking over our educational institutions. Our children are at this and that. Well, if only you had known that there is something called the constitution in place, that there's something called fundamental rights, inalienable rights, which, by the way, India borrowed from this country, right? Things would get a lot better, right? I'm sorry. I think this has been like a jumble of thoughts, ideas of maybe some value or no value. But considering my very momentary predicament, this is all I have been able to scribble for you. I know that I've taken maybe almost an hour here. So I want to thank everyone who is listening in and who took the time to listen to my ideas, thoughts. I hope this has been of some benefit to you, I hope this has been at least marginally a learning experience for you. And I want to thank the sponsors, the hosts of this program, Dr. Sharma and Dr. Vivek Shankar, for granting me this opportunity. And I hope we will have occasions to meet and interact in the foreseeable future, where we can exchange ideas and benefit from it, both individually and collectively as a nation. Thank you very much, and you all have a very nice evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact,
Gulchanji?
Yes, please go ahead.
You would agree that it was a very scholarly presentation. I had to go in and out, as I said. Yes. And we should be grateful how we have to look at a roadmap of how we find a way to include Professor Menon and people of his persuasion, likes of him, in our quest for the new education policy when we make it, when the rubber meets the road. Yes. So I think that is the way forward. Yes. So that's just an observation I wanted to make. And I want to thank you for taking the effort to sponsor both of us on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I run short of words and I become more humble after listening to such a wonderful insight from Professor Sarath Menonji. And when he started, he said, when Professor Vivek introduced me that I am the scholar of education, I would like to say I'm a student of education. That was such a humble way of putting it across and making a beginning from there. Ethics you have emphasized so much. United India you have given to us. And when you talked about the value guided central place and social responsibility, and particularly parents' role, educational role, and then the girl child, then the boys taking on the street, and couple of things picking up from there. Then your own college example, which you have quoted, and I think enough you have given the message that whether you want to read Shakespeare or you really want to know what exactly real Indian values, historical perspectives are, art, craft, culture, heritage, literature, philosophy, poetry, all that which you have touched over there. And we should get to our own legacies, sense of patriotic feelings, nationalism, and strengthening our own identity. And then thereafter, NCC, you brought such an important point over there. It touched my heart, my soul, my spirit. And then you gave a different global dimension, how education to deal with terrorism. And then finally, what a beautiful example you gave of those three quotes, your your cousin going for interview for the citizenship of America, and their importance of constitution, that every child to know what exactly constitution, and it is for the people of India, by the India, what we want to tell all the time. I think it's a remarkable insight what you have given. Every Indian whosoever is watching this program, irrespective whether they are sitting on the soil of India or they are abroad, I think you touched the soul of everybody this evening. And let me touch now your soul, Professor Saab, while giving my gratitudes and thanks to you. You come from Kerala and I come from Punjab. And can you imagine that I have traveled the entire Kerala, starting from Ponmudi to Tervantanapuram to Varkala, Varkala to Alapi, Alapi to Koilan, Koilan to Vipin, Vipin to Kochi, Kochi to Trichur, Trichur to Mullampura Dam, Mullapuram Dam to Kottayam, Thekdi, Idki, Periyar, Shabramili, and I've gone in Ayyappa's clothes over there. And then
I see.
something very interesting, sir.
Wonderful.
You mentioned about language and you told that Malayalam pretty well while saying Namaskaran, because you have started your day. So we tell you in Malayalam Namaskaran. I'm pretty sure you
Thank
must
you.
have enjoyed in your young days movie called Chattakare.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I personally feel that music, language, art, culture, Bollywood, and for that Tollywood, for that Bollywood, whatever you want to give the name, I think education, music, and the kind of visuals, they play a very important role for all of us. I may not be in a
Certainly.
position to pronounce it properly, but as a token of respect, as a token of gift, as a token of gratitude, as a token of love, being a Punjabi, I would like to say two lines in Malayalam.
Okay. Go ahead.
என்னும் வெண்தாரத்தின் ஆடும் வேளா யஷாமலா சரண் கோச்சும் வேளா प्रेम लीले कोचु कमल माया ग्रहम monundaki. Further, I know only Hindi part, but this
Right.
much I
Certainly.
just wanted to give you the glimpse that irrespective whether we are in northern India or we are in southern India, as long as we carry the flagship of India and our values and ethics of India, which you have brought on the surface once again as a part of education ecosystem. Great pranam, namaskaran, gratitude, thanks. Wonderful day ahead for you in America, and wonderful day ahead for everybody wherever they are world over. I think we all got to club in together, and these ethos, these ethics, these values, these ancient heritage has to be brought back into our own education ecosystem. And the history part, which you made a mention, I have noted it down. I will go through it tomorrow itself. where you talked about the high school book revolution. I have noted down. I have noted down. So, sir, we have become more humble. Our chamber is indebted to you. Our president is watching this program 3 hours ahead of me, all the way sitting in Thailand. My another co-panelist and people, my immediate past president is watching your program from Los Angeles. And a lot of other people have joined us from the world over. I convey my deep gratitude on behalf of all of us. We are so humble. We are more humble. And thanks for sparing your most valuable time and starting your beautiful morning and giving a beautiful evening to India. Thank you very much. Pranam and namaskaran.
Thank you
Namaskaran.
very much. Thank you. I am indeed honored by this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor.